All through me comments, all through the flipping comments. Guyana is not Caribbean. Guyana is not Caribbean. I want you to answer a few questions for me. 1. Do you know where the CARICOM headquarters is located? 2. What is CARICOM? And 3. What nations, countries, wherever, does CARICOM consist of?
Where exactly is the Caribbean supposed to begin? And where does it end? Is it only islands in the sea? Only places with white sand beaches and cruise ships? Because here's a question that's confusing the internet. Is Guyana Caribbean? Or are people just clapping on that label without knowing what it really means? Let's talk about it. Hello everyone, welcome back to Trending Pulse Worldwide, where we unpack the stories behind the trends and break down the truth no one else is explaining clearly. If you're new here, my name is Amy. Hit the subscribe button and join the conversation because today we are tackling a cultural identity topic that's gotten people seriously confused.
Is Guyana part of the Caribbean? Well, yes, but no. Let me explain why you're partially right. Well, Guyana is definitely part of South America. That is no debate. It doesn't even border the Caribbean Sea, it borders the Atlantic Ocean instead. So again, you're completely right. Geographically, Guyana has nothing to do with the Caribbean pretty much. In fact, the same thing goes for Suriname, French Guyana, and even Belize. But the thing is, the Caribbean is not just a geographical area. It's an area that's defined both by geography and socio-economic policies. In fact, the basis of even being considered part of the Caribbean was actually being part of the former British colonies of these areas, which Guyana happened to be part of the British West Indies. In fact, the craziest thing is that CARICOM, which stands for the Caribbean Community, headquarters are literally in Georgetown, Guyana, which is the capital of Guyana. One of the main aspects of even being Caribbean is sharing a very similar culture. Guyana, although they do have an indigenous population of their own, the main culture does resemble that of the Caribbean, especially the Lesser Antilles. So all in all, would I consider Guyana part of the Caribbean? Well, as you said, geographically no, but culturally, yes, 100%.
Let's start with the obvious. If you look at a map, just a regular map, you'll see Guyana sitting on the northern edge of South America. It's not floating out in the Caribbean Sea. It's not an island. It doesn't have the same tropical resort branding that places like Jamaica or Barbados do. So naturally, people say it's South American. Case closed. And to a lot of people, being Caribbean means being in that stretch of islands between Florida and Venezuela. That long arc of sunny destinations like St. Lucia, Grenada, Antigua, Puerto Rico, and so on. So when they say a country like Guyana, landlocked by Venezuela, Brazil, and Suriname, it doesn't fit the image they have in their heads. Another reason is that a lot of people don't know anything about Guyana to begin with. They confuse it with Ghana. They think it's a Spanish-speaking country. They assume it's culturally South American like Brazil or Colombia just because of the location. And since Guyana doesn't appear on many Caribbean tourism campaigns, Caribbean cruise ads, or West Indian festival posters, it gets left out, even though its people are very much in the mix.
I want to clear something up, right? Guyana and Guyanese people is Caribbean. Geographically, it doesn't matter. Historically and culturally is the most important thing. Yes, they share land with South America, but they have Caribbean heritage. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the most important thing. Without Trinidad and Guyanese, Miami Carnival would have gone bankrupt already. It would have quarter the amount of people there.
As a Guyanese, I have to give my 2 cents on this whole situation that's going on right now between Major Hype and Guyana. Because he came for the whole of Guyana's neck and they're tearing him up. But anyway, is Guyana a Caribbean country? Alright, so boom. Geographically speaking, Guyana is located on the continent of South America. Alright? Not in the Caribbean Sea like the other Caribbean countries. However, Guyana is considered part of the Caribbean, and Guyana is one of the founding countries of CARICOM, which means the Caribbean Community. Why is Guyana considered a Caribbean nation? Guyana was colonized by the British for what is it, 170 years or so. And Guyana gained its independence on May 26, 1966 from the British. Culturally speaking, the culture is very, very Caribbean, more than Latin America, okay?
First and foremost, if you're a Caribbean native and you're a holder of a CARICOM passport, you're welcome. Please go and do your research and look at the countries that signed the bill so that CARICOM is a thing, so that we have our own thing.
If you really want to understand what makes a country Caribbean, you can't stop at geography. You have to look at culture, history, language, politics, and people. And that's where Guyana proves itself over and over again. So first of all, Guyana was a former British colony, just like Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad. And that alone sets it apart from its South American neighbors. They speak English, they have Commonwealth ties. Their education system, legal system, and government institutions were modeled after the British, just like the rest of the Anglophone Caribbean. And that's why Guyana sounds more like the Caribbean than it does like Brazil or Colombia. You won't hear Portuguese, you won't hear Spanish, you'll hear Caribbean Creole English, just like in the islands. Secondly, ask a Guyana person where they're from and they won't say South America, they'll say the Caribbean. And that's not just a random answer, it's because the way they live, the way they celebrate, and the way they connect to the world, it's through the Caribbean lens. And they celebrate Mashromani, a national carnival. They listen to soca, dancehall, and chutney music. They eat roti, curry, pepper pot, and cook up rice. Their dialect, jokes, values all sound like home if you're West Indian. On top of that, Guyana is a founding member of CARICOM, the Caribbean Community. It hosts the headquarters in its capital, Georgetown. And CARICOM is not just symbolic. It's a political and economic alliance that links Caribbean nations through trade, foreign policy, education, and diplomacy. So Guyana isn't on the sidelines, it's in the driver's seat of Caribbean leadership. And again, walk in any Caribbean event in Brooklyn, Toronto, or London, and you'll find Guyanese flags waving right next to the Jamaican, Bajan, and Trini ones. And in many families, Guyanese people have married or migrated alongside other Caribbean nationals. Their children grow up with shared cultural roots, Caribbean restaurants, shops, churches. You'll find Guyanese people embedded in all of it. And in fact, many people who grew up in places like New York or Toronto didn't even realize Guyana wasn't an island, because culturally it was always right there in the middle of the West Indian community. Lastly, you can't define the Caribbean just by looking at a map. You have to understand how people live and how they connect. Jamaica, yes, it's an island, but its identity is tied to its language, music, food, colonial history, and Afro-Caribbean culture. And Guyana checks all of those same boxes. The only thing it doesn't have is ocean all around it. So, just to make it clear, geography alone doesn't define identity. Guyana may not sit in the Caribbean Sea, but it moves with the Caribbean rhythm, sounds like the Caribbean voice, and celebrates with the Caribbean soul. So the next time someone says, Guyana's not Caribbean because it's not an island, ask them this: is that really all the Caribbean is to you? Just some dots in the ocean? Because for millions of Guyanese people and their neighbors across the West Indies, the Caribbean is a shared legacy, a cultural connection, a rhythm in the blood. And Guyana, it's right at the heart of it. Now guys, that is what I had to say. But before we wrap it up, I had found a mystery that completely caught me off guard, and I knew right away I couldn't unpack it in this video. It needs its own deep dive. So I'll just leave you with a teaser, and trust me, it's one you're going to want to come back for. So guys, did you know that historically Guyana was one of 5 different Guyanas? Yeah, 5. And each one was claimed by a different European empire with its own system, culture, and colonial legacy. It's wild to think they are all once shared the same name, Guyana, and were carved up based on which empire got there first. Some of those regions remained dependent, some became independent nations, some kept the Guyana name, others let it fade. But all of them were once part of a shared territory that most people today know nothing about. So in my next video, I'm diving straight into the full story. Who divided the Guyanas? why, and what traces of that division still exist today, culturally and politically. We are going there. So guys, make sure you're subscribed, turn on the notification bell, and let me know in the comments if you've ever heard of the 5 Guyanas before, or if this is blowing your mind like it did mine. So guys, let me know your thoughts. Did you grow up thinking Guyana was part of the Caribbean, or did this video open your eyes a bit? Drop a comment, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more culture deep dives right here on Trending Pulse Worldwide. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.